What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. This is going to be my review of the new Netflix series, DAHMER. Said that really weird. So I just got done watching the new 10-part series of one of the worst serial killers ever known. So first of all, I'm going to say I was completely surprised that Netflix had managed to create or managed to get over a line a series about Jeffrey Dahmer and do 10-part series on this absolute horrific story. It's such a horrific story. I just didn't understand how they could do a series on it. I thought it was going to be a movie at first, and that made sense. I was like, okay, sick. Like, the story is fascinating. I'm fascinated by serial killers and true crime. Anything on that sort of genre, I'm fascinated by it. And I think that's because it's so real. It's just so real, and it's so scary and so mind-blowing that we can't comprehend this being a reality. We can't comprehend this sort of stuff going on because you never think it can happen to you, but it can, and it happens all the time, all over the world, everywhere, at all times. This sort of horrific shit is going on all the time, and it is so scary that that's a reality. But it is the reality, and it's real, and that's what fascinates me. So I know all about Jeffrey Dahmer anyway. I knew about him years ago. I've watched so much stuff on him, all the interviews. If you haven't already and you want to know more about him, and if you have seen the show and you want to see more, go on YouTube and watch the interviews with Jeffrey Dahmer. It is mad. It's mad how open he speaks about it. It's mad how just calm he is. It's bizarre, but very insightful to a serial killer's life and mind. It's really, really interesting. I find it interesting anyway. So anyway, back to the point is, I couldn't believe that they were going to do a show about it, because having a 10-hour series following one of the worst serial killers that we know of as the lead character, who you're going to end up probably... I don't know if the show is going to try and make you like him. They don't. It's not... The show doesn't try and make you like Jeffrey Dahmer at all. But I feel like Evan Peters, who plays Jeffrey Dahmer, which, by the way, is an incredible performance. Incredible performance. Felt really weird saying that. Anyway, it's such a good performance. Like, I was blown away by it. I was like, oh my god, it feels like I'm actually watching Jeffrey Dahmer, because he plays him so well. The way that he speaks, the way that he's so calm and collected, and just his mannerisms, just the way that Jeffrey Dahmer is on these interviews that I've seen. Evan Peters plays him exactly down to a T. I thought it was a really, really amazing performance. Really good. And not only that, some of the scenes and situations are really, really tense, and they're disturbing as fuck. And Evan Peters has to do all that as a job, as obviously as the actor, as his job. It must be, I don't know, I imagine it would be quite taxing on your brain, on your mind, to play this serial killer and to get into the mind of that and stay in it for long periods of time. As I'm saying that, I remember Evan Peters even says that in an interview on YouTube for the Netflix show. He says he has to get into Jeffrey Dahmer's mind, but stay there for long periods of time, and that was quite hard. Well, I said it was the hardest thing he's ever done in his life, which I can imagine it probably would be. I have no idea about that, because I've never tried to do it, but it would be a dark place. You would have to get into a dark mindset to imagine yourself as this horrific, brutal serial killer. And cannibal and everything, like everything you can think of, Jeffrey Dahmer was. It's insane what he does. Yeah, mad. So yeah, following Evan Peters playing Jeffrey Dahmer was, I couldn't help but want to see more of it. It was like every time the show kind of ventured out onto someone else's storyline, I kind of always wanted to go back to Jeffrey Dahmer. I was like, I want to see more about him and what he's doing in his life. And that's just because the performance was so good, but also the life of Jeffrey Dahmer and the mind and what he's up to and the way he lives his life is just crazy and fascinating. So yeah, it's a very interesting story, but this show also goes into, which I thought was amazingly done and written so well. I'm so glad the series did this, and this is probably how a series like this gets over the line, because I thought, how are these victims' families okay with a show doing a full series about their children or brothers or whatever family member it is, relative? How can they do a show with these victims who are part of their family in the show getting murdered? It's like, how does a family allow that? And I imagine it's because in this show they really do let you spend time with the victims and show you their story, show you their family story, and I feel like it was a good thing that they did that. I'm so happy that we got to spend time with the victims in their lives. In this show, we get to spend quite a bit of time with a couple of the victims. Mostly one of them is called Tony Hughes, which this one got to me a lot. Tony Hughes was one of the victims, and he was a black gay guy that was deaf. And yeah, that story is really, really sad. I don't want to go into any details because I want you, for anyone who hasn't seen it, to go and watch it so you just, you don't have it spoiled, but it's such a sad story. And I actually was in tears like once or twice, even before the ending of the episode, because I just knew what was coming, and just his life was just so challenging, being a deaf person, getting through life, and nobody being able to, you can't hear what anyone's saying, you can't speak, so you're having to write everything down, and it's like, it would just be challenging. Even to get a job was a nightmare for him, and I just felt so sorry for him as a person, because he seemed like such a lovely guy. His mother as well, like, God, I felt so sorry for his mum. It's such a sad story, and then he meets Jeffrey Dahmer, and, like, I just can't believe that that's what happened to him. And, you can imagine what happens from then on, but watch the show, you'll find out. It's really, really sad. The show also spends time with a Filipino family. Their story's so sad as well. All the stories of all the victims' families is so sad, but these two families in particular, it stays with them mostly, that I remember anyway. But yeah, it's just well written, and I'm glad that they did that. All the actors in this did an absolutely amazing job. Everybody. Like I said, Evan Peters, who plays Jeffrey Dahmer, incredible performance. It's the best performance I've seen him do. He's already a good actor. I always really liked him, but like in this, I'm like, okay, you're absolutely sick. You're so good. The woman who plays Jeffrey Dahmer's neighbor, oh God, let me just get her name because I actually want to know, because she deserves to have some credit here because she is so good. Okay, she's called Niecy Nash, and she plays the woman Glenda Cleveland. Glenda Cleveland was Jeffrey Dahmer's real-life neighbor, and this woman is an amazing woman. The real woman is an amazing woman, because she did everything she could to try and get Jeffrey Dahmer caught by the police. She knew what was going on. Well, she had a very good idea. She was a neighbor. She could hear all the screaming. She could hear all the fighting going on. She could hear all the power tools that Jeffrey Dahmer was using on people, the saws, the drills that he was drilling into people's skulls and pouring hydrochloric acid into the hole to hopefully brain dead these people to keep them alive still, so they would be like in a zombie state, so he could keep them as like his weird fucking pet. Like, it's so insane. But she could hear all this stuff going on, and she, not only that, she could smell all the rotten flesh and bodies that he was keeping around his apartment through the air vents. It was supposed to be the most horrendous smell ever in her apartment, and she lived like that for, I can't remember how long it is that he goes through this killing spree, but he kills a lot of people. He actually kills 17 people, which is mad. And she lived through it, and she always would call the police, tell the police, like, look, someone's being killed next door, you need to get over here. The police would literally be like, well, have you got any proof of that? And she's like, well, no, but come over. And they never would. They never would. And he could have been caught so many times, and he never was, because the fucking police, again in this series, shows you just how bad the system is and how bad these police are. There's even a point where the police are even calling up the victims' families and, like, giving them shit down the phone. But once their families have, like, found out that their son or whatever's been killed, the police will call them up, these two police officers, and give them shit down the phone. Tell them to, like, leave the country and just horrible stuff. And it shows you all this in the show, and I never knew any of that. So the show gave me a lot more information than I knew about, other than what Jeffrey Dahmer does. And yeah, just such a good show. Jeffrey Dahmer's dad, Lionel Dahmer, is played by, I can't remember any names here. He's called Richard Jenkins. He's a well-known actor. He's great. I think he's the dad in Step Brothers. He's a really, really good actor, and he does an amazing job in this. They are just like the real people. Lionel Dahmer and Jeffrey Dahmer in real life, these actors who are playing these these people, nailed it. It's just like them in real life. I couldn't believe how close it was to the truth. Also, like the victims' families, when you see them in the court, and they're doing all the court case, which is online. You can go and watch the whole court case online on YouTube. Fascinating. I've watched all of it since the show. And these families, when they're talking on the stand and they're giving their speeches out, the actors and the show does this exactly down to a T, and it does all the story down to a T. It stays so true to the real stories. It stays as authentic as possible, and you can just tell that it's just been made really, really well. And Yeah, I was just surprised that they were going to do a series, but I'm glad that they did, because in a movie they wouldn't be able to tell all the people's stories that was important to tell. So yeah, really, really good for doing that. The cinematography in this was great. The direction, the acting, the music, everything about it, just the tone, the grading, just everything about this I thought was done so well. I'm interested to know what other people think about it. Because I've got a few friends that have watched it and they're like, yeah, the first episode was enough. I'm like, no, don't just watch the first episode, get through it. Because whether you know the story about it or not, the show, like I said, gives you so much more information that I think is needed around the story, other than just knowing what Jeffrey Dahmer did. The family stories need to be known as well, I think. So, yeah, if you are watching this or you're wanting to watch it, try and get past the first episode. It's not just all like that, but yeah, it is pretty intense. The show does show you quite a lot of stuff. In the show, you do see a lot of the things that Jeffrey Dahmer does, but it doesn't go into too much detail. It doesn't show you every brutality and every disgusting act that he does, but it does show you enough to get a really, really good idea of what he's doing. Also, another thing I didn't realize, the actual house, the apartment of Jeffrey Dahmer in the show is pretty much... the set is designed exactly like his real house, his real apartment. And I didn't know that till like today or yesterday. And yeah, I didn't realize that. So when you're watching the show, just know whenever you're in that apartment and you're with people, it's probably exactly like it was for real. And that is scary and it's weird and it's just like, oh my God, it's so real. It's so real. It's so strange. So if you're looking for a really interesting, crazy, fucked up, disturbing series, then watch Dahmer. And for me, if I was to give this show a rating, I would give it a very strong 8 out of 10. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you did, please hit the like button. That'd be amazing for me. If you are new here and you want to stay updated with my content, then please hit that subscribe button. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.